going, this is crazy, this is crazy. They're gonna yell at you, they're gonna spit in your face, they're gonna tell you sucked, they're gonna make you feel really bad, and you're gonna do this in public? What's wrong with you? Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017, and today I want to talk about making amends, and more specifically, my experience making amends, as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you are new here, I basically just overshare and say embarrassing, cringe things about my experience in recovery and spiritual growth, integrating it into all aspects of my life, not just the alcohol part. I have found it to be extremely helpful. This is a design for living that really works. And so I'm very passionate about the work. I'm not very legalistic about it. There are other ways to get sober. I'm just saying that this is one way. It's a spiritual approach. It's like how it's a really effective way to create a spiritual awakening. And if you're ever into the woo-woo and like the spiritual aspect of things, AA is it. This is how you do it. This is how you get to a spiritual awakening. And today I want to talk about specifically making amends. So as an addict alcoholic, I have in my life made some mistakes, you could say. Apparently, I am not without flaws. And especially through the decade of drinking that I was experiencing the most tremendous, tumultuous time of like DUIs and broken relationships and resentment and, conflict with my parents and family, work, etc. It was a time where I created a lot of chaos that when I got sober, I found out I had to go back and clean up. And I didn't think that I knew that, especially like it kind of always sounded like if you ever heard about making amends, like in movies or something, like the way it's typically portrayed is just like, I'm sorry, I was drinking and I'm a bad person. And it's like, there's one thing that I learned about making amends in Big Book Awakening, which is just a way of how I was taught to go through the 12 steps, is that we actually don't say sorry. When I go back and make amends, I don't say sorry because guess what? I spent a decade just saying nothing but sorry. Nobody wants to hear me say sorry anymore. Instead, if you've ever heard that really like cliche phrase that like the best apology is changed behavior and action, 100%. I 100% agree with that. That's also when people tell me that they're sorry, it doesn't really mean anything. I really want to see behaviors change. I want to see and feel the remorse, not as an act of like, you know, self like indulgence and like, oh, I'm such a bad person and I'm recognizing and admitting like what a bad person I am. It's more like I did a bad thing and here's what I'm going to do to make it up for you. I'm never going to do it again, and I'm going to clean up how that bad thing like blew up in your face and my face and everyone's face. It takes a lot more courage to go back and try to fix something than it does to just be like, sorry, sorry, sorry. Sorries are lame. I don't want to hear it anymore. And I don't mean that from other people. I mean it from like my own mouth. Because if I'm unwilling to take the action to change or correct the behavior, that means that I haven't actually confessed to myself in my inner knowingness and my inner truth that what I did was wrong. It means that I want to continue to perpetuate this behavior that is clearly harmful to somebody, and to myself, right? So I'll read a little bit from the big book and what it says about making amends. I just really want to hone in on this idea that making amends does not simply mean saying that you're sorry, but there are some wonderful, wonderful promises that are discussed. First, it's on, if you have a big book, it talks about the ninth step, mostly on page like 83. And here they talk about how the spiritual life is not a theory. Like, it's not enough to be like, oh, to intellectualize and to like know that like, oh, I did all those things, but I'm just never going to do them again. It's like, no, we have to live this out in flesh and blood with the people who we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And so the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. And it's also important that we're not just going around like evangelizing everybody to AA. Like actually, even me talking about AA on something like a YouTube platform goes against one of the traditions, which I was never really taught because it wasn't, I don't, it's more, I understand, it's, I'll tell you what my relationship with AA is in another video, but we have to live it. This isn't a program of promotion. This is a program of attraction, right? And so we want to attract people by the way that we live our lives. And so the way that we do this is we understand that there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. The illustration that they use for this is like an alcoholic being a tornado, roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. And we think a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. It's like, okay, well, I just caused all this wreckage, but you know what? I'm sober now, so it's not going to happen again. It's like, no. That's not enough. He's like a farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing." It's like, and we tend to have this delusion. I know I was in such delusion when I would have these moments of sobriety and kind of just like wake up from the stupor and be like, oh, wow, I said and did a lot of hurtful things, but it's cool because I'm just going to be sober from here on out. And it was like, those people who I just like totally was horrible to are not like, okay, she's sober now, everything's good. No. It takes way more like awareness and understanding of oneself and others and willingness to be clear of anything that can take me back to a resentment, that takes me back to drinking and possibly death if I don't clean this up, right? And unblock this, because we'll always know that there's this thing that's like in between me and this other person. If I don't make an attempt to really correct it or set things right. And so a remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fit the bill at all. Like, again, we can't just say that we're sorry. Sure, there might still be things that as we, how we make amends is by going back through our resentments and realizing that we actually owe amends to most of the people we were resentful at. And we make amends for the things that we found to be our part. So this is like the sheet, right? So the first page of the inventory is everything that they did and how they affected us. And then the backside is like, oh wait, I've actually done some type of flavor of this to others or this person specifically. And here are all the ways that I chose to hold on to this resentment and delude myself into thinking that this was a justified resentment. That actually just kept me separated from this person or from other people, and especially blocked from this sunlight of the spirit or this relationship that I could have been having, which was a power based in God or a higher power, right? And so when we recognize that, we're able to be like, okay, so their defects might be glaring, but chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. And that's the part that we want to take responsibility for. And we want to do this in a way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. So if that sounds difficult, I'm going to break down even further just how actually simple this is, and how freeing and how much it's worth it, actually. There might be some wrongs that we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. There have been amends that sometimes need to be made graveside. People have already died, people have already moved on, people have, are unreachable, people are back in relapse or whatever. Sometimes we can't make all the amends that we want to make. But if given the opportunity, we need to be willing to jump right up and do it. There's this one story I want to tell about making amends. I don't think I've told it on here yet. I used to rent a room when I first moved down to San Diego County. I rented a room from this guy and his girlfriend, and they had just found out that his girlfriend was pregnant at the time when I moved in. And I rented this room. I kept to myself mostly, just in my bedroom, and except for when I would have my boyfriend over. It ended up, most of my relationship while I lived there was very chaotic and not really great. And my roommates had to hear about it. After they moved, I lost contact with him. I lost their number. I don't even know their names at this point. I think one of them I think I maybe remember her name, but I never had her number. Anyway, all of that to say that when the time came to make amends, I wanted to make amends to them for kind of disrupting the peace of their home, and especially when she was pregnant and just bringing all this drama into their home. But I had no way to get in touch with them. And I still cannot remember that. I don't have like terrible memory, so I don't know why. Well, I kind of do recently, but I couldn't find them. I looked through my emails, I looked through my phone, nothing. And so I remember being in this step, and I was hanging out with my friend one day. We were, for whatever reason, we decided to meet up at this Target in Escondido, which is one that I don't go to. I don't think I've ever been back to that Target since. And I was just sitting outside, and we were just chatting about whatever. And coming across the parking lot are these two people who looked a lot like my previous roommates. And I just kind of like stopped talking. Like we were like mid conversation, and I just like stopped talking. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I need to make amends to them. And I didn't know how I would ever find them because I didn't know where they moved to. I didn't have their contact. And my friend's like, go. And so I was like, okay. So I like jumped up from the seat, and they had already made their way inside. I just felt like possessed by this wonderful, like hopeful, loving spirit that I can only describe did not come from me, because I also felt my own fear and my own anxiety and my thoughts going, this is crazy. This is crazy. They're going to yell at you. They're going to spit in your face. They're going to tell you you sucked. They're going to make you feel really bad. And you're going to do this in public. What's wrong with you? And that it didn't matter because my feet were already being carried by this other power. And there I go in after them, and they were in the baby section. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like, hi. And I just kind of startled them, and they were just like, oh, hi. And I could tell that she was going to have another baby again. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Congratulations. And then I went through and really quickly made my amends. And my amends, I'll tell you, is how this goes. I probably should have had this pulled up. The way that we make amends is we tell them why they're there, why we're here. This is the harm that I'm clear on. I ask if there's any other harms, and we ask if there's anything that we can do to make this right. So in this case, it would have been like, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so. I'm really glad I ran into you. I want to make amends for during the time that I was living with you. I understand that I brought a lot of drama and chaos with my drinking and with the relationships that I was in. And it was really inappropriate to do that in your home when you were so kind to rent out the room to me. Are there any other harms that I may have caused that I'm unaware of that you want to tell me about right now? And they both were like, no. They were just like so like taken aback, because I just like it was like word vomiting in this at this point, right? I was like, this is my chance. We're in the baby section of Target. I'm gonna tell them everything. And they're like, no. I was like, okay. I was like, do you need to tell me how any of this affected you, like personally or otherwise, or something that I'm just not anything I'm unaware of that you've been wanting to tell me? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, well, I'm wondering if there's anything that I can do to set things right, to kind of, that was a really bad time. Is there anything that I can do to correct that now? And they both looked at each other, and they were just like, no. And the gentleman who I had rented from was actually like, no, but you know what? We're really glad. We're really glad that you're sober. You look great, and really happy for you, and just keep doing what you're doing. Like that's all you can really do at this point. And I was just like, oh my God, like you guys, I could have just melted into, and it was like one of the first few, I think, oh no, actually, it was like one of the last amends that I had to make, and because I couldn't find them. I just like wanted to melt into like this puddle of just like grace and love and like compassion for myself and for them and for every living, breathing thing in this world. And that's really the experience that I had with like all of my amends, actually, except for maybe like I always talk about there's these 3 Scorpios who did not let me make amends, and they just did not. They were not having me at all. And the Scorpios just really are not into it, amends, I guess. But anyway, I just felt like that was so cool, and I just felt like I was vibrating. I just felt so light. I felt so at peace with the world. I felt so connected to everybody. And again, this was one of the last amends that I had to make. out of the 50 resentments that I had, I made amends to everyone on that list except for an ex-boyfriend who I really did owe an amends to, but who had I didn't know, I didn't feel like the time was right because it was still too raw for me. And then this couple, and it was just like I floated out of that Target, and I met my friend who was like, so how would it go? And I was just like, I just couldn't believe like how good life could be. I just never felt that I could feel that good and be sober. And what? From like facing people who I was like so embarrassing in front of, and like owning up to that and being like, can I make it right? Like it was such a beautiful experience. And it was just so, I just can't even, I'm just feeling it all over again, just like feeling this love. I'm like, oh, humans are so cute. I love them. We're so beautiful. And we do this. Some of the promises that they tell us is like, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. I love telling that story to my sponsees. And it never fails that they also have some like crazy miracles amends. They're like, I haven't found this person for 10 years. I don't know how I'm going to find them now. And then like this person will spontaneously appear at their gym where they're working or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Is it odd or is it God, right? That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. It totally did. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. 100%. I felt more connected to humanity in that moment than, well, I can only ever experience sense by making amends again and blocking myself from this sunlight of the spirit, this power, this higher power. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. A fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. This has 110% been my experience, my personal experience, anytime I go through the steps. And what this is actually doing, if you want to get more practical about it, is it's really creating a personality shift. It's creating a personality shift by doing things differently that we wouldn't have done before. This is why when people are kind of stuck in this cycle of drinking and kind of messing up their lives, I'm like, do you feel like you have a problem? Are you willing to change it? Do you want to change it? Because sometimes that chaos loop can be really comforting for people until they're ready to be like, okay, this is actually more painful than it is comforting now. I want to grow out of this. And when people are in that phase and that like painful part of that realization of like, I want to do something different, that's when the work is really going to help. And having the spiritual experience of actually connecting. And it's like, oh, what did I used to think would happen in situations like this? That like my ego would just be crushed to this point of irrevocable like return. Like I was never going to be able to survive a rejection or somebody calling me out on my BS, and it's like, actually, now that I'm more firmly rooted in my identity as this divine part of something greater in this world, I'm unbothered. Like I cannot take these things personally, actually. And I kind of talked about it in my last video, but it's like there's a genuine understanding that like, damn, that sucks. And if I did something wrong, I want to set it right. If I know that this person is just in pain and I'm happen to be the recipient of that pain, that's a bummer too. But I do know that whatever is happening external to me is not going to deem my worthiness. And I can actually float and exist in this world, in this moment, with the people in front of me, with the people I'm engaged with, in a much more beautiful and pure and fearless way. Because we understand that fear is the root of what actually is causing us to be separated from this greater feeling of unity and this spiritual sense of belonging to ourselves and to each other. It's a really beautiful feeling. And this idea, and this is really where I got the most freedom, and people always want to make the excuse. So like, oh, I can't contact them, I can't contact them. And there are some people we really cannot be contacting on trying to make amends. And sometimes we just have to write a letter And sometimes we just have to sit with that in prayer and meditation. Sometimes we need to find some other ritualistic way to feel this physical release that we want to have. But, I was always really surprised by people who were told, like, you can't talk to exes and like make amends. And I'm like, no, that's where I got the most freedom. Or like, you don't have to make amends to your parents. I know you're sorry. I'm like, what? I had so much freedom looking at my parents and telling them, I am so sorry for that. Not so sorry. I wanted to set this right. How can I make this up for you? This is why to this day I can't own a motorcycle because I promised that I would not engage in risky or very dangerous behavior, outwardly dangerous behavior that would cause them extreme concern or worry or risk my life. And owning a motorcycle, I guess, is one of them. I really want a motorcycle, but it can't happen. So it's fine. I made peace with it. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. Okay, you guys, we need to work for them, and we work for them by doing the steps, by sitting in prayer and meditation every day, by setting things right as soon as we know. And this brings us to step 10. And step 10 is part of now, instead of accumulating a decade's worth of 50 resentments that poison our souls and our connection to this greater power and our relationships with other people, now we're doing like a daily sweeping. Now we're able to kind of, okay, what did I do today? Was I selfish? Was I in fear? Did I act out? Do I owe amends to anybody? And then, okay, then tomorrow morning I'll sit with that in meditation and I will launch into action. Again, this is not just a thinking, believing thing. This is a program of action that we actually have to take behavioral changes towards. And some of that is taking accountability sooner than later. Because otherwise we just don't know how much blockage from the sunlight of the spirit, how much of resentment we can take before we are poisoned enough to go back and reverting to our old coping mechanisms, which were drinking, drugs, sex addiction, gambling, compulsive shopping, overeating, all of these different types of behaviors. So that's all I have for making amends. It's so powerful. If you're interested in this, I strongly recommend going to like a Big Book Awakening meeting. They have them online. And if you're in San Diego, actually now they're around the world, actually. If you go to bbaworks.com or we do recover.com, you'll find more information on these meetings. I love them so much. They've changed my life, and I continue to use all of these practices on a daily basis. And I feel like that's why I'm so passionate about the work and about you. And I hope that if you need this, that you will also look into doing it. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I love you so much. Have a great day, you guys.